Call to David Shore, 9:35 p.m., June 11th, 2008.
Are you there, George?
David.
Yeah, I called him, and he called me back. I left him a message, Tom Manuel. I says, hey, Tom, how you doing? And he tried to act a little normal, and I said, Tom, I just got off the phone with Jim Casey in Jacksonville, and you could just hear the air go out. And I never thought I'd ever hear him humble. He said, David, he says, I'm so sorry I let you down. There's so much we could have done in the county together. He said, I got weak and I fucked up. And I said, you know, Tom, I said, there's only been one perfect person that has walked this earth, and you ain't talking to him. There's always redemption, and there's always forgiveness. I said, right now you got to do the right thing. And he actually says, well, you know, what should I do, David? And I says, well, Tom, you know your ass is going to get indicted, and you know your ass is going to probably have to do some time. And at that point, he broke in and he said, David, I hope I can count on you to stand next to me as a character witness at some point. And I said, hey, not a problem, Tom. I said, I think you should resign because the minute you're indicted, the governor's going to remove you. And the county needs to move on. He was very humble. He was very apologetic, and all the steam and all the bravado and all gone. It's just sad. It was really a sad conversation. He's got a daughter, a young daughter, and he's got a life, and it's nothing to be great. It's nothing that we can gloat about, but it is what it is. It was pure corruption. And I'm thinking here tonight, I'm going, why didn't he use a buffer, for God's sakes? I'd have at least had my brother-in-law pick the package up.
The bag man.
He didn't even use a bag man. And, I tell you who I'm more pissed off at. I'm pissed off at two groups of people in this community. One group are and I like Phil McDaniels, don't get me wrong. I love Phil. Phil's a friend of mine. I'm tired of these one-issue people like Phil, like the Hamiltons, like Kathy Brown, all these one-issue people. And if you're an elected official, if you happen to believe in what their one issue is, they'll get in bed with Genghis Khan.
Right.
And the other group that I'm just pissed at is the media. And I'm going to tell them about my ass just the first chance I get. That, and maybe now is the time that we can elevate this discussion in this county and stop with the back slapping and the high fiving on the commission and all of this secret squirrel shit with all of these groups, these commissions, on this commission, and Ben Rich out there pumping Ken Bryan. Well, Ben, you gave us Tom, so why don't you sit this one out? And I just hope, and I told Wanachek, I said, Michael, I said, now is the time to assert yourself. You need to tell those commissioners that you're going to run this fucking county and close their offices up and get them all one office they can share, then put their name on a schedule and use it. And enough of this five princes, walking around the county building. I said,
Well, did you say that Tom's wife called Ben Rich the night that they took him down?
It may not have been the night, but she called him a night or two later.
I wonder why.
Ostensibly because she knew he was in the federal system.
Wanted advice how to handle it or something?
She didn't have any idea how to handle it. And, I was going to do something with the sunshine. when Jim called me tonight, I had to make a split-second decision pretty much. And he was.
You mean Jim Bryant?
No, Jim Casey.
Oh, Jim Casey, the sack.
Yeah. When Jim called me tonight, I was gonna, he gave me the opportunity, George, and I just let it pass.
Mm-hmm.
It's
too late now, anyway.
Well, not like that. It would turn a chicken salad case into a chicken shit case.
Right.
And
right. That's like having some guy indicted for murder, and you want to try and get him pinned with a parking ticket.
Yeah, you want to get his wife pinned with, and it's kind of like, how much can this county stand?
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be bad enough. Our chairman, this guy that, and the media, I don't understand it. I don't understand how anybody in their right mind, a lot of people said the minute they met him, they said, oh, he's a crook, he's going to jail.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people said that, but a hell of a lot of people said, including the media, hey, this guy's onto something. How the Margot Popes of the world could have had more than a 15-minute conversation with that guy and not have figured him out is beyond me.
Right.
Absolutely beyond me. The day I met him when I was the police chief, I said, this guy's dirty.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just my intuitive gut. And but there's not going to be any nonsense about...
Well, what was it that compelled you to feel like you needed to give him a call today? Was there something going on that it was like the time to
give who a call?
To give Tom a call.
Well, I was talking to Jim about it, and Casey,
yeah.
and I said, Jim, I feel compelled to call him. I mean, he's out here in no man's land, and I said, what do you think? And he says, well, David, that's up to you. He said, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, he knows what he's up against. You're not going to tell him. You can't tell him anything he doesn't know. So I can't really explain that. I just felt compelled to reach out to him. I guess because, George, he's got to make. This is a very delicate situation. See, if he stays in office, for another, say, 4 weeks until he's indicted, that's going to cost the county about $150,000 in a special election.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's chicken feed, I know. But if he resigns this week, there's enough time for somebody to come up, and that's where we got to put our thinking caps on. If he resigns this week or early next week, somebody could walk in with a $3,600 check and sign up for that district race.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really know why, to be honest with you. It just felt like I needed to.
Yeah.
I didn't have a long discussion with him about anything. He's extremely remorseful, obviously. He's extremely disappointed.
Extremely remorseful he got caught.
Yeah, that's my wife walking by. George. But I think he needed it. You got to remember, I live in a worst-case scenario world,
mm-hmm.
and here's my worst-case scenario, is he kills his wife and then himself tonight.
Right.
That's the world I live in.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but my worst-case scenario is he comes down and kills me.
Yeah, well, they don't know anything about you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys, yours and Bruce's role is completely covered up. I mean, I haven't, and I don't know that it will be uncovered. I mean,
right.
Personally, he's going to get indicted and he's going to plead. I mean, he ain't fight. They got his ass dead to rights. He's going to plead guilty.
Well, he wouldn't have been free this long if he hadn't confessed to some degree.
He did confess.
Yeah, and so the indictment. Here's the guy's tape. Let's get an indictment. Let's go. Yeah. But my only anxiety was that I know that they were. Out of Arlington Expressway, we're seeing whether they could get anything else. I mean, they never said anything to me about it, and the only inference that I drew from that was the fact that he didn't go down that night is that he was cooperating, and I don't know whether there was any merit or any meat to what he was giving them.
There wasn't. Jim basically said he didn't have shit. He tried to say there was some lobbyists out there that could be corrupt and that he's not the only one doing this. He said, but it was just a big empty bag. I'm not so sure. I think with the right people asking questions, because I know Paul McCormick's dirty. I mean, that's who I wanted to see go down with him. And but he didn't have much. I mean, nobody trusted Tom. Nobody. Tom liked to pass himself off as everybody loves me, and Dan Davis and Marco Rubio and Adam Hasner, and those guys didn't like Tom. He just forced himself on them.
Yeah, well, I saw the invitation to the Adam Hasner thing, and I thought, I'm glad my name's not on there. Well, I had heard, I guess, in your call to Bruce that the FBI was coming down to interview staff tomorrow.
Yes. Yeah.
And is that what precipitated, like, it's going to get out or something?
Yep, that's right. Jim said...
because I tell you, I already got a call from Ed Brunson, who is close with Cindy, to say, oh, my God, it's going down, and, it's going to be the chairman, and
it's going to start getting out.
So it is out there big time right now.
Yeah, it's going to go. And let me tell you, what my position is on it is that there's still an active federal investigation. Tom Manuel's the target. Let's see where it goes from here. Now I'll go off the record for a little bit, but Bruce's involvement is completely undercover. I mean, that's not out there.
Well,
it may never have to be revealed.
Right.
If he pleads guilty, he goes away. It's a done issue.
Well, I tell you what, I'm not your lawyer, but I am your friend, and my only recommendation to you is that I know how much you love this county, and how much a part of your life it is, and how much you want to see that the right thing gets done for it. But I would be just really careful, David, about any discussion, particularly like in front of Michael Wanchik or whatever, about we got to be careful about the timing on who qualifies for the election, et cetera, because we may have our own opinions about who'd be a good candidate or a bad candidate, but nobody's ever going to divorce you from the office that you serve, and they're going to say, what the hell is the sheriff doing? Trying to play kingmaker on the timing of the stuff and when it comes out and who gets appointed. There is no good outcome for you on that.
No, and I'm really I don't really have any involvement in that at all, as far as I'm concerned. However it comes out, it comes out. I mean, I don't know how it's going to happen. I do know that I hold out hope that it's going to change the tenor of local government.
What wound up having in terms of having Wanchik come over? What did you feel like needed to happen with Michael, and what does he know so far?
Well, Michael doesn't know. Michael's getting ready to go to work tomorrow morning. There's going to be federal agents talking to employees. Mm-hmm. And so Mike needed to know, and all Mike knows is exactly this. Mike, you're going to get a call, tomorrow morning, and there's going to be federal law enforcement that are going to be coming into your shop, and they're going to be conducting interviews related to an investigation involving Tom Manuel. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's exactly what's happening. Beyond that, that's all. That's the only need to know he had. Right. And in fact, I asked Jim Casey that question. Mm-hmm. I said, Jim, because I'm going to tell you, they show up tomorrow with their badges. Employees will start scrambling for attorneys. It'll be a hell of a disruption.
Well, the first thing they're going to do is figure out, do I need a lawyer? And then the second thing they're going to say is, I wonder what Marco Pope's telephone number is.
Yeah, right. And basically, so Mike, that was and Jim agreed with me. He said, Casey said, yeah, just give them some heads up. I'll have my people check in with them. Mm-hmm. That would be kind of
SOP.
I couldn't do that to Mike. That wouldn't have been fair. Hell, and I told him, you may get questioned.
Well, I tell you that my perception of Mike is that he is a really good asset for the county.
He's a great asset.
Yeah, he's a professional. He's he's kind of able to come in from the outside in a way that he's got no competing loyalties where somehow he's going to be tainted with anything.
Absolutely. And you know, it's just it's going to be interesting. And if Tom does the right thing, and you know, he's going to go away into the sunset, and hopefully we can rebuild. I mean,
well, I tell you, you know, Michael called all of the commissioners and felt like he needed to tell them what was happening tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I wound up getting a call from Ed Brunson, who said, "Oh my God, you know what's happening, and there are going to be indictments and da-da-da-da-da." And of course he's particularly close with Cindy Stevenson,
right.
And so I'm sure it must have been Cindy who called
Randy
him.
Brunson or Ed?
No, Ed.
I don't know Ed.
Ed's a guy who helped some of the guys who did Aberdeen and Durban Crossing and some other stuff, and he's a nice guy and straight up fella, and you know he has been in the development business for a while, and he tries to facilitate stuff.
I think Mike did the right thing. I mean, he's got to, you know, I mean, it's really curtains up, George. I mean, the commission, Mike's got an obligation there to let them know that, you know, we got some heavy. I mean, we're 12 hours away from heavy stormwaters hitting out of the county, and the word's going to be. I mean, it's out there. It's going to be out there, and you know, I want to let. In fact, I gave my fellow constitutional officers a heads up. Didn't go into any detail. I just said, look, I don't want you guys to get caught flat-footed, but here's what you're going to be hearing in the morning. I mean, so I think Mike did the right thing on that. I mean, he did the only thing he could do.
Right.
But, I mean, it's out there. It's going to be out there. There's no sugarcoat. A lot of people are going to want details that
yeah, there are going to be a whole lot of people, particularly the people who have a steno pad in their hand and a deadline to meet, who are going to be interested.
Yeah, and you know, and they're not going to have the details that you and I and Bruce have.
Yeah.
And they're not going to get them. I mean, it doesn't serve anybody's purpose to go into how this came about. And, you know, I was thinking tonight as I sat here in my living room about you and me bumping into each other at Noble that day. It was like you could almost tell it was on both of our minds. I don't know if you said first or I said first, but I said, you know, that conversation we had in the restaurant, that's been bothering me. I mean, and that was really the beginning of the damn thing. Yeah.
Well, I think
I'll tell you, to me, the true hero in all of this, if you really want my opinion, the game.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up there. Say that again.
I said, if you really want to know the fact of the matter is, the one guy out of this whole thing that comes as a hero for me is Bruce.
Yeah, I tell you what, I told Bruce the other day, I said, I never would have been able to carry this off. I mean, he was just, from every indication, and he had nothing to gain and everything to lose.
He had nothing to gain and everything to lose. He did it. It was the right thing to do. And I told him on the phone, I admire the shit out of him for it.
Yeah, I mean, I had said, can you imagine what would happen if you introduced this concept and Tom says, you dirty son of a bitch, you will never get a vote from me in St. Johns County. Your history here, I'm not that way, and he would have been, he never would have been able to work in St. Johns County again. And as it is, I got to tell you that I have anxieties about myself and him in terms of our effectiveness. I mean, what do you do when some other land use lawyer says, I don't know if you want to hire him because everybody's afraid to talk to him because they're afraid he's wearing a wire.
Let me tell you something. First of all, I don't think they'll ever get out who was actually the players. And second of all, if it ever does come out, I think just the opposite. I think what you're going to hear is if you want the most ethical, straight up guy in town, go see Bruce Robbins or George McClure. That's my.
Well, I hope you're right. It is that, if my reputation is I get it for you by playing the game the right way, and playing by the rules. I'll take that all day long.
Hey, look at you have. You got where you got today on your character and your reputation. You and I ain't good looking.
Hey, speak for yourself.
You had a sterling reputation going into this thing, and quite frankly, I admire the shit out of you because there was no win upside for you at all to even be involved.
Well, it's kind of a backhanded compliment that it became apparent that Tom wasn't going to say anything if I were there.
Right.
And it's kind of like Bruce had to handle it on his own because, Tom would drop things now and then to me about saying, well, you're not really in the inner circle yet, and if I just knew I could trust you and all that kind of stuff. But he clearly didn't think that I was on the, willing to cooperate with somebody on the take, and you know what? I'm glad he thought that. I'll take that as a compliment.
Absolutely, and again, George, there was no upside for you to be involved in it to the extent that you were, and it's never going to go to trial, which means Bruce is never going to have to testify, which means the full story. Now, at some point down the road, somebody could do a Freedom of Information Act request for 3 or 4 years down the road and find out, they probably couldn't even get a CI's name that way. But I think what's very important here is your involvement and Bruce's involvement needs to not be on the table for anybody to know.
Good. Well, I will tell you that I was a little anxious that Michael was in your house when you were talking to me tonight.
He did not know who you were.
Okay.
No. I could tell that when you were on the phone. Mm-hmm. And if you remember, I never called you George.
Yeah.
And I could tell by your tone of your voice, it was like, holy shit, he had no idea. I must have gotten 10 phone calls. He had no idea who you were. Mm-hmm. Absolutely not. And I truly think that for some of the reasons you indicated, I don't think we need to put it out there. I mean, it's nobody's business. And even when it's all said and done, you, me, Joel Belante, and Bruce Robbins in Arlington are the only people that know that.
Right. Well, I tell you this, and I know I said it before, but I want to be, I just want to be so clear about this thing, and that is that I think that, it's kind of like the fact that Karen Stern had strong support in the last election wound up being turned against her. Even though I think that she was a very ethical person who tried to do the right thing, and it should have been simply a matter of do you agree with her votes or not, and not all this this painting of her that they tried to do, including the record, by the way.
Absolutely.
But what I was going to say was that I think that the best thing that you or I could do for the future of public governance in St. Johns County is to let this thing take its course.
Yeah.
And, whether there's time for the election or not time for the election, I think that things will sort out. And what's going to be so critical is, and this place is going to be in an uproar for months. And there are going to be, I think that people are going to look for islands of stability, of people who are able to say, we're going to get through this. What we need to do is pay attention to the facts, get rid of this guy, get rid of the rhetoric in our public discourse, and get down to the facts and stop ripping each other up and calling each other names and giving people like this an opportunity to get elected. And that means not taking sides. I mean, if the governor calls and asks you between A and B, who do you like, you tell him, and tell him strongly. But I think if people get the perception that there was any political motivation to this, then that's the fact that Tom Manuel is a crook. Is going to get lost in the sheriff was out to get him, and the sheriff wants to get his person appointed because he's mad about his budget or whatever.
So, and you want to know the funny thing about it is the irony of it all is Tom is my biggest supporter of my budget.
Yeah, well, that is that is ironic. But like when you were talking to me in front of Wanchik and said, we don't want to get so and so, or we don't want to get so and so. It's like, if I were Wanchik, I would convene special meeting of the Board of County Commissioners as quickly as possible and say, I want to report that our staff has been interviewed, here's what's happening, and it's my duty to inform you, and is there any action you'd like to take? And he can find out whether or not Tom resigns or shows up at that meeting or whatever he does. But I don't know. But I do have...
That's exactly the way I think it's going to go down.
Yeah, but in terms of who sorts out, you and I have to work with whoever gets elected, good, bad, or indifferent. And Mary Conkey may have voted against everything I ever presented to her, but you know what? She wouldn't take a nickel. And that's okay. If that's who people want, that's the democratic process. As long as we get rid of the crook, let the democratic process run its course.
Here's the other thing, George. I'll give you an example. When I was police chief, they wouldn't put David Daniels' picture up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, remember the police chief Daniels and all the problems we had back in the early 80s?
Mm-hmm.
And I told my staff, we need to put his picture up. Oh, hell no, he was only here for a year and a half. Because you don't want to just put the good guys up. You want to put the bad guys up because this whole thing is going to serve a higher purpose.
Hey, last I checked, you can see President Nixon's face on the list of presidents of the United States.
That is exactly right. And you do that to remind yourself that you can recover from bad times. So maybe at the end of the day, with all of this stuff with Tom, it will get past, it could, my personal opinion is, I think it's going to unify this county. I think people are going to start getting involved. And you're exactly right. We let this thing go. We let this thing go on its natural chain of events. If we wind up with a Mary Conkey again, or a Phyllis Abatello, or a
I don't think Phyllis is going to win.
So be it. It's like I said. Joel and I were talking about it today because he's the only one I can talk to about it. I said, Joel, Tom was our biggest supporter in our budget. We were getting ready to have lunch on Friday to talk budget, and he was to be my voice piece up there, helping me with my budget. I can tell you this: I don't think it'll ever get tagged as a political issue for a couple of different reasons. Number one, it wasn't.
Yeah.
If it was, now, if I had tried to get Ben and Cindy on a sunshine violation, then you open yourself up to that criticism.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that will never happen. You'll never hear that. I've actually sat here and thought about the citizen that says, well, hell, how that happened on the Sheriff's Watch. How come the FBI had to get involved? And I may at some point have to tell people that I'm the one that went to the FBI at some point early on. But I personally think people are going to run for cover. I think, like you said, people are going to look for strong leadership. I think we just got to do a real close analysis in this county. There's been way too much apathy and way too much joking.
Well, and I tell you, it'll change the discussion because, it's kind of like I remember going to see Judge Watson when I was practicing law with Paul Martz and was just frustrated and felt like we weren't succeeding, and I was his partner, and I went and sat down with Dick and said, "Gosh, I'm just really upset." But Paul, I know he puts every nickel in the drawer. That there's no hidden deals. There's nothing else. He's honest with every penny. And Watson looked at me and said, "So, isn't that the way it's supposed to be?" And it's kind of like, you know what? The assumption should be that the first criterion is that our politicians are honest. And before we talk about anything else and all the other things, you know what? Let's look into their heart and check their character, because the first thing is, is this a person I trust to be fair and impartial and do the right thing and really be someone who's a leader, or am I picking somebody who's just an egotistical SOB?
Right. Or are you picking somebody like Ben Rich who is still so mad at the fire department because they held signs for Bruce McGuire and Karen Stern.
Mm-hmm.
Still couldn't bring himself to vote for that MSBU. Holds a grudge for so long and that you're exactly right. It's about on, and I really believe at the end of the day there's going to be some great upside to this, and I can tell you, I think everybody's handled themselves. I had a little bit of a testy conversation with this back up there earlier. What's today?
Today's Wednesday.
It was yesterday. You know, I really was.
With whom?
With the SAC.
Oh, with Casey?
Jim, yeah. You met Jim yet?
No.
Great guy. And I said, Jim, I said, you know, I personally had a real problem having Tom sitting there yesterday and being able to vote on something so important as an MSBU that is going to, I mean, that's a major shift in policy.
Sure.
And here's this guy sitting up there.
Front page of the paper today.
Yeah, and quite, you know, Jim and I didn't, we agreed to disagree. I said, you know, Jim, I said, you know, what's the answer for that? Because somebody at some point may say, well, you took him into custody on this night, then you released him. Well, while he was released, he imposed a tax on the citizens. I mean, or whatever the case may be. But I don't think anybody will ever connect the dots. But the bottom line is this, and here's the good news, George, for us. Here's the good news. That's all they found.
Well, here's what I was worried about, David. I'm glad you said that, but and Lord knows that my 2 years of prosecuting in a county that only had 15,000 people in a part-time job from 76 to 78 doesn't exactly make me a law enforcement professional. But if they were coming down to interview staff, then I could only infer that they were coming to say, okay, here's my list of particular projects for particular people.
Right.
Did you receive any communication from Commissioner Emanuel that pressured you to achieve a certain result in the staff report or whatever? Because if he didn't have anything, they got nobody else to talk to. If they're coming to staff, it's not because the staff has done anything wrong. It's because they're trying to follow up to see whether or not what he's told them.
Actually, it's going to be more like it'll be more things like address. It'll be more. You know, it's not going to be. I know it's not going to be that because I don't think it ever got to that. Jim had mentioned it's more of a ministerial. They've got to get like. What's the word that he used? Like his personnel file.
Oh, so to get stuff to prove that he was a public official, you know, those things that would establish the necessary elements of the crime.
Yeah. The investigation's over with, George. I mean, they're not coming down here tomorrow.
Yeah, it's kind of like I used to have a checklist when I prosecuted. Let me see, I got to prove venue, I got to prove this, I got to prove that.
You know, they got to get documents that a defense attorney. You know, you mean you investigated this guy and you didn't even get a copy of his Microsoft Outlook calendar?
Yeah.
How do you know where he was at on such that type, ministerial type stuff? Let me tell you, if there were still targets out there, I can assure you Jim Casey wouldn't have called me and gave me the green light on making some notifications. I mean, if this thing was still active, and, you know, it's funny because Jim told me on the phone, he goes, you know, you said early on, David, there wasn't going to be anything else. He goes in there. There isn't. He said it was kind of like all he had to offer was that, well, everybody does this. And, well, who? Well, I don't know everybody. Well, be more specific.
Well, you and I had that conversation a year ago, and that is that Tom acted like he had this sense of entitlement. Like once you got elected, it was your ticket to the gravy train. And it's like, okay, I'm not going to get any more speeding tickets, traffic tickets. You know, I am off the hook.
Came into my office the week he got elected and said, don't you want pictures of my family?
Yeah.
What for, Tom? This is to my secretary. Well, you know, in case they get stopped or anything. No, Commissioner, we don't do that. See, Tom comes from an era, and I told you this before, it's like New York cops. New York cops do things in their culture that I would consider corrupt.
Right.
Because, but to them,
it's just part of it.
It's part of it. I mean, you know, when I was growing up there, you know, gambling wasn't a crime. I mean, everybody had football cards, and I mean, gambling, and that's why that's such a pernicious thing that the feds have to work on all the time, because it's one of those crimes that's so easy to justify. But we always said when Daniels came down here from New York, he was pissed because he found out we weren't corrupt. He was fully expected to have a bag man, and I think Tom, and you know, George, I've been thinking all night. There were times long before we went to the FBI where I told Tom, see, I was getting information on Tom early on, and it was the same stuff before you and I ever talked. It was very similar type stuff. And it was one was he wanted to do something with affordable housing. I got word early on that a deal was brokered, and this is all fourth hand, that during the election that Tom got the word to some money people that if they paid him $600,000 and I think gave him a Sunny franchise or some shit up in Georgia, he would withdraw from the race. So this stuff was swirling around him from 8 to 10 to 12 different directions. You know, that's what you got to realize. You guys, you got your tail hit home because we were sitting there, and there's Bruce there who could honestly say, face to face, this guy, you know, intimated that he wanted to be a consultant after being elected.
Oh yeah. That was my first take when he said your clients need to hire me as a consultant. And it's kind of like, okay, that's just too weird.
But there are no more targets, and I didn't. Basically, I had to call Jim back, because I told him, well, Jim, I want to think about this sunshine stuff, and I got off the phone. I talked to Joel. We talked about it. I sat real hard about it, and I just said, and there's probably a lot of people, if they ever found that out, would be very pissed off. But it's kind of like, you don't gloat over the vanquished, and you don't try to take people down out of anger.
Right. Well, that's kind of like developers. I tell them never let your money get mad. You just got to make the decision based on what's going on, and don't let your emotions get in it.
If I had done that, it would have been out of anger.
When did Wanchek first hear about this stuff?
Wanchek actually. Now this is between us, but Wanchek actually the day after. Today, really, from me, but the day after Ben Rich got the call from Tom's wife, Ben went into Mike's office and was in a panic.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my God, blah blah blah. And Mike, he was a little bit sketchy. Ben was a little bit sketchy, and Mike knows that Ben's crazy. At any rate, he knows Ben's crazy. And then today, after talking to Jim, as a courtesy, and Mike's professional, he understands the game. He's not sharing anything, but he's got to have heads up in the morning.
Sure. Did he call you after Ben saw him? You came to see him in a panic?
No, he never did. And I asked him that question. I said, Mike, how come you didn't call me? And he said he didn't really. He did give me an answer. Oh, I know what it was. He said, because I asked him that same question. I said, well, why didn't you pick up the phone? Not that I could have said anything. He said, Sheriff, he goes, I'll be honest with you. He goes, I was kind of scared. I thought if there was something going on, I didn't want to know anything. I didn't want to be involved in it or know anything about it. And see, now Ben turned around and ran into Bill Proctor somewhere over the weekend.
Ben Rich?
Yeah. And I got word that he looked at Bill Proctor, and you need to stay away from Tom Manuel, Dr. Proctor. And then just somebody overheard that, and Proctor just looked at him like he was crazy. So
it's funny. I saw Proctor getting a cup of coffee this morning.
Did you? And that's where I think that little bit of leakage that we had. That's what I'm thinking is where that came from. Is Ben had about 4 days advance notice, I think. Mm-hmm. Now he kept it pretty tight. He's very tight with Peter Guinta.
Who, Rich is, or
Well, Rich is, yeah, he's pretty tight with Peter Guinta, and that may be where Peter got, because Peter called me Friday.
Ooh.
I told you that.
Well, you didn't mention Peter, but you said, well, no, actually, I don't think you mentioned that. But what I did hear was that Shorelines was calling and saying something like, we understand that, Commissioner Manuel got elected got arrested in the parking lot.
Where did you hear that, Shorelines?
I think I heard that from Bruce.
From Bruce Robbins?
Mm-hmm. And I think he heard it from Eileen, because I think the FBI had gotten a call about, do you know anything about so-and-so getting arrested? And, of course, the truthful answer could be, no, we didn't arrest him, because they haven't arrested him yet.
Well, I had to lie to my buddy Peter Guinta. Of course, Peter asked the wrong question. Was he arrested in St. Johns County? No, he wasn't. But the truth is, it's funny you say that, because the Shorelines, somebody from the Shorelines did call the county attorney's office today and got Pat McCormick. And that's something else we want to share.
It was a bad day for Patrick McCormick, wasn't it?
It must have been, because somebody in the media, because even when Bruce McGuire called me today, it was two people in the media, and I'm starting to think one of two things. One is that, not that it's important. One is I was mystified. And, who knows who was at the restaurant and saw what? Who knows? But when I found out that Ben had 4 or 5 days' notice, he just must have told some people that were tied into the papers. I don't think Ben, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think Ben would have reached out to Peter, because he's not proud of it, because Tom is his wonder
his
project.
buddy. Right.
But all of that's...
I think that it purely boils down to somebody saw something going on in the parking lot. It's too bad they didn't move around the corner of the building or down the street or something like that. But somebody must have seen something and said, "Isn't that Tom Manuel? And God, what are they doing there? He's being led away." I mean, he wasn't in handcuffs or anything. I don't think.
The thing that caught my ear was when Bruce said it today. He said the reporter said at a place in Duval County.
Yeah.
Well, quite frankly, I had forgotten where it took place. I think you told me Neptune Beach or...
Yeah, no, it was at a restaurant called Giovanni's, which is right in Jacksonville Beach.
Yeah, and I had kind of put that in the back of my mind, so whoever had that had some pretty good damn information.
Mm-hmm.
And it might have been, there's very few places I can go where people don't know me. And Tom's been in the damn newspaper an awful lot lately. So
his picture's been on the front page of the Times-Union.
Somebody... We got a dispatch today to his house in Ponte Vedra. The fire department did, because his mother-in-law's boyfriend fell down the stairs in the house. So I was on the edge of my seat for about 15 minutes till we found out.
What's going on?
We didn't know what the hell was. I'm serious.
Just so you know that I'm not a total goody-goody, you want to know my evil thought. And you're free to claim this as your own. Here's my new line. You ready?
Yeah.
Tom Manuel, a waste of a heart.
A waste of a heart. You do have a vicious side to you, George.
Isn't that cruel? The answer is that he talks about how he was brought back from the dead. He was on a mission, and he was given a 19-year-old heart or something like that. It's too bad you didn't give it to somebody who wasn't a crook.
No shit. And I'll tell you something else. Joe Pomar told me years ago. He said, David, he said, don't cry over other people's self-inflicted wounds. And you know something? Tom had a lot of, if you remember, the FBI dragged on this thing. He had plenty of opportunity to think about what he was doing. He had plenty of opportunity to get right. And the simple fact of the matter is, he was so brazen. He did it in a restaurant.
Yeah.
So
60 grand, boom.
And every time the silly ass record put him on the front page of the paper, he was more and more bulletproof.
Yeah.
And ironically, the night that happened at the restaurant, the night that went down, which was last Thursday night. Tom called me at about 4 o'clock, and it was light banter with no real purpose. He had come to our awards banquet, and I got off the phone and I said, that's just him wanting to hear me one time to see if he can pick up anything in my voice, or, you know what I mean? Well, I figure if I can call the sheriff directly, everything's okay. Well, it wasn't okay. And, you know, I don't think anybody, I think the only person that's going to come out of this hurt is Tom Manuel, and that's the way that it should be. Mm-hmm. Everybody else, from me, to you, to Bruce, to our friends in Arlington, everybody, if you think about it, George, everybody did what we were sworn. All of us did what we were sworn to do. No more, no less. And all of us stepped up. The only person who didn't do what he was supposed to do was Tom Manuel, and he's going to have to pay the price.
Right.
And, you know, there's going to be...
Well, I tell you, the only thing that you know, worries me about what his scope was, and of course he may have been just wrapped up in his ego, but he was saying things to Bruce at these dinners about, we're going to make millions. I mean, this wasn't a moment of weakness from somebody with health and financial difficulties and whatever. I think he had this idea that he was smarter than all the rest of us, and he knew some way to parlay public office into making a pile of dough.
Absolutely.
And you know, well, I was just going to say, I'm ready to go back to where county commissioners make $10,000 a year, and they keep their own jobs, and they show up every 2 weeks for about 4 hours and provide some guidance on what goes on.
That is exactly that's exactly needs to happen. And quite frankly, these commissioners should not be meeting with people that have issues coming before them. I think that they should have staff to do that.
Yeah. You know, I've been willing to do that. They've been saying, you know, you don't give up talking to commissioners. My only fear in that whole process is that there are commissioners who will only talk to the people who oppose a project. You know, the neighbors call up and, you know, I'm going to go visit my neighbors. And if we could all trust him to say, you know what, I'm going to wait till the hearing and hear it, and I'm sorry, don't talk to me about that. That's on my calendar. And if you have something to say to me, please show up at the hearing on February 16th, and I'll be happy to hear what you have to say. But, you know, we need to do this in a public proceeding.
Absolutely.
But they won't do that. They'll go, oh, yeah, you're right, and, I'm on your side.
And, you know, it's just, you're exactly right, and we need to go back to the days where they're not camped out at that office all day long.
Yeah.
Getting in everybody's business.
I told you the next guy, you know, when they ran on the platform of, I'll be your full-time county commissioner, that's a good enough reason for me to vote against him.
That's exactly
right. If you got a guy like Michael Wanchik, who is a really competent professional, you know what, set policy and let him do his job.
Absolutely. Hey, the board of directors at Microsoft aren't at they're not at headquarters every day.
Yeah, they don't show up to the guy and say, oh, okay, can you tell me why you're not doing this? Or why are you in the company car at home?
Right, exactly. That's exactly right. And that's what they've got to, you know, I hate to say it because I'm anti-charter government because of this, the way it came about, but that is one of the benefits of charter government. You can get that set where you have a strong county manager like we have in the city, quite frankly, the way it works in the city.
Well, it'll be interesting to see whether, I mean, the smartest thing, if there is any statesman on that board, that what they need to do is somebody needs to rise from his seat in 2 weeks and say, you know, we need to take a timeout. We need to take the divisiveness of this charter off the agenda, off the ballot. We need to take all, you know, any things that we're discussing that people are up in arms about, you know, who's sticking it to whom, and let's wait until we get through the election.
Isn't it too late for somebody to do that?
I don't know.
You know, I agree with you, and quite frankly, that's exactly what should happen. Mm-hmm. But you know, I got thinking back on Tom. You know, when that whole McCormick came up with him riding his car, I warned Tom. You know, I had forgotten that. Tom told me that at my office, that he was trying to impress me how much he knew Paul McCormick, like I gave him shit. I looked at Tom and said, Tom, that's inappropriate. Mm-hmm. I said, someone's going to say something. But he was bulletproof. He was invincible. And he just, in the media, every time he turned around, he's on the front page of the page. David, I was in Trend magazine twice.
Oh, I know. I know. He was all over that. And let me tell you how many times I've been on the editorial page, and the Times-Union wrote this. And
I would love to hear those tapes. I bet those agents couldn't believe what they were dealing with.
Well, I tell you what, David, and I said it earlier in our conversation, and I say this as friend to friend, and that is that as the chief law enforcement officer of the county, that when this thing busts, you are going to get 19 zillion phone calls from the media.
Yep.
And the answer is this was a matter which I monitored and which I was aware of. But it was important for it to be handled outside the county. I provided the support and information that I was required, but this is their case. I'm awfully sorry that this happened, and period.
You just took my words out of my mouth.
Yeah, I mean, and as far as anything in terms of candidates or stuff like that, I mean, if the governor calls you and says, David, what do you think about A versus B? Give him your opinion. But if people think you're being kingmaker, it's a bad idea for you. You there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now.
I'll even go a step beyond that. I'm not even going to let on that it initiated from me. That I handed it over to the feds. So, but here's my talk is, when he's indicted, it's a sad day for this county. It's time for us to move on. This is, or actually tomorrow it'll be. This is an active investigation. The FBI is the lead agency. And other than to say that it isn't an active investigation and that Mr. Emanuel is a target of the investigation, I have no other information. I can't release it.
Well, when it's done, though, they're going to be back at you.
Yeah, and when they're done. And I'm not going to get into that role because that's not my job. I did my job, and my job was to investigate potential crime or have it or cause it to be investigated, and who gets and how they get picked. Obviously I care so much about this county. I don't want to see another Tom Emanuel, but I got my own problems. I mean, I got 600 people and with a shrinking budget, and the crime rate ain't going down. So I don't have time for political machinations.
Well, listen, I got my son in from New York City, and he and his brother came down, so I'm going to hang with him for a little while.
You going to take some time off?
No. I got too much to do. I am jammed with stuff. I don't even think I'm going to get a vacation this summer.
I'm going to bug you and give you updates if you want to call me in the evening or anything.
Okay, well, listen, I know you're going to get 40 zillion phone calls, and so please call me anytime you want. And it's it's kind of busy, so if I can't take the call right then, particularly given the nature of our discussion, please understand I'm not dissing you by saying, David, can I call you back?
George, I had tremendous respect for you before this started, and it's only grown since we began it. And I appreciate everything you've done.
Okay, good enough,
all right,
David.
Buddy.
Ditto. See you.
Take care.